All right. Now I want to explain Caruana Burke to you from the same round. The same deviled egg. And we're going to get to a critical position. In fact, this was the critical position. I just randomly got to it. Okay. This position, white is slightly better. This is Caruana Burke. And the reason white's better, and this is from round 3, the reason white's better is black played h6, g5. If I put this pawn here, I don't think white would be better. Maybe, but not as much. And when black did do that, and you're like, why'd black do that? Well, as a consequence, this bishop was getting trapped, and black captured it, so black has the 2 bishops, what else? Well, if the pawn was here, it would be 2 bishops, what else? But the pawn's here. So black's going to have a tough time getting his king safe. It's not really safe anywhere. Okay, if you're going to play g5 and a double king pawn opening with black, it's because you're attacking white's king. h5, g4, h4, rawr. Okay, but first things first, or as Chris Penn would say, first things last. Somebody tell me, but please, where are the diamonds? Okay. Etc. All right. So here, black did not want this to happen, losing a pawn. I agree. And he made a very, 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 very bad decision on what to do about it. And he made what I call a low-rated players move. A move that is attractive to low-rated players, but not to good players. So I was shocked. I'm not shocked when good players make bad moves. I'm shocked when good players make these kinds of bad moves. I'm like, what? You're a good player. You shouldn't even think of that move. Okay, and I'm right. The engine doesn't, this move isn't even legal. Okay, and the better you are at chess, the more this move disgusts you. Okay, he played bishop a6. I would never play bishop a6. That's a really bad square for your bishop. Terrible. This is a nice diagonal for your bishop. And now you're leaving it like unprotected, come on. So that's a really terrible move. And it's not terrible because I have a forced win. It's like black should go here now. Like he put his bishop on a bad square. Okay, now the reason that Burke did that is a lot of younger players, and he's younger, they play a lot of moves because they calculate a lot more than I do. So they literally don't care about my strategical, niceties. They're like, yeah, you and Yasser, go to the old folks' home. Let me show you these 50 variations I calculated. And the idea behind bishop a6 is I'm going to play b4. And if I play b4, my bishop's okay on a6. It's all right. Okay. And if you play the engine move here, b4, then knight c4 is coming. So this is based on tactical calculation, not positional concerns. And here, Fabi, who's good at both, showed him what's what. Right? And Fabi played a move, and I can never explain fully how good this move is. When he played this move, I was impressed. And I'm not easily impressed. Ooh, there's a blue car. Huh. No, white doesn't play b4 first. And by the way, if I was white, I would seriously consider b4. Okay, but he doesn't do that. He plays a much better move, bishop b3. And that move is so good that I hope that someday some of you get like 1,000 points better and then go look at the game and go, oh yeah, Ben was right. That's what I'm hoping. Okay, so this move lets me play knight c2. So my knight is entrapped on a3. It's a much better diagonal here. And if you play b4, I can still play knight c4. And once I play knight c2, so that my knights can go to d5 and f5, both of them, I'm gaining a tempo. And if this knight or this knight maneuvers to f5, like this, or like this, or like this. Okay, and there's other ways. You want your bishop on c8. Okay, so bishop b3 is a great move. And now it went downhill from here. Every move Burke made his game worse, and it was a total destruction. And when I say destruction, it's a 2800 destruction. It's not a 1200 destruction where you just hang all your pieces. It's a destruction where if Magnus is watching, he looks at white and goes, good, good. And then they get Hikaru into the studio to look at black's position, and he says, frankly, ridiculous. Okay? And at the lower levels, the strategical considerations are a little difficult. Okay, but not for Fabi. So black played 97 because all that stuff I said. I was like, the knight's coming here, the knight's coming here, and he's like, yeah, whatever, 97. So what? Okay, d4, which you always want to play in double king pawn openings when the knight leaves c6. You're hoping to play that. When the knight's on c6, e5 is defended. So d4 is excellent, and the reason it's excellent is it looks risky. You're like, no, b4, no. And Fabi's like, whatever. So b4 actually is reasonable. Then knight c4, this bishop is attacked, this pawn is attacked, and we have to take this. We can't just give this pawn away. And the two bishops are gone. White has the center, and I have no idea why black did this. My queen can go here and here. My knight can go here and here. This pawn is attacked. Your king's not going to be safe on the king side. Your bishop is shallow and pedantic, and it's terrible. And when I say it's terrible, this is what the engine wants to do for black and says it's terrible. Okay. So he took on d4. Knight takes d4, working on his knight moves. b4 attacking the rook on f1. Knight c4 attacking the bishop on a6. The bishop on c8 was defending f5, and it wasn't getting attacked on a6. So he has to give up the two bishops. So black needs to put his pawn here, and then needs to castle, and then he's worse, because this bishop's a monster. But with this, and the king here, he's just lost. In this position, I was confused about why Burke gave this pawn away. And then when I analyzed it, I was less confused. I thought Burke should take, and then castle. Instead, Burke castled, and Fabi went yum, yum, yum. Well, the problem with this is white doesn't take back. He has a Zwischenzug. He can play queen f3, threatening queen f7. So you don't have time to take this, although you can take it. Okay, then queen f7, and we looked at this in the live broadcast. King c6, rook takes a8, queen takes a8, b takes c3. This is hanging, and the king is on c6. And you can never move the knight because I go check. And if I take the knight, I'm threatening that. And white is like plus, 45 here or something. I don't know. Okay. So after queen f3, he would have to castle. He doesn't have time for that. And in this position, I could just take back. And this is just unbelievably terrible, because I'm going to play queen f6. Yeah, the engine says, crushing. Although I think I have a better way to play. I want to play better. I'm a professional athlete. I always want more. I want to play queen h5, but bishop b5 check is also good because he didn't castle. And then we could play this, or we could play knight c6. Yeah. Having looked at it again with an engine, I think taking this is better. It's losing, but I think this is more losing. Then he takes on b4, white's up a pawn with a dominating position. This knight can never move because knight f5 is going to win. So he played d5, which hastens his defeat. And these are the human moves that aren't engine moves, because they hope that your opponent's going to blunder, and that doesn't happen in computer chess. Chess engines don't assume you're going to blunder unless you put the thing really high. What's the thing called? Contempt. And when I was playing backgammon before you guys were born, we were talking about backgammon engines. And at that point, I don't know now, but at that point, this is a long time ago, the engine just played the best move, what it thought was the best move. And often in backgammon, it's better if you're a much better player than your opponent. It's often better to play the trickiest move, and then your opponent makes 30 mistakes. And it's sort of like this in poker. In poker, there's the poker play, and there's also the play that's not as good, but your opponent is more likely to make a lot of errors because your opponent's terrible. So computers generally don't assume that one side's just going to play like an idiot. But I always assume that. So my moves are never computer moves. So when you see me beat Mamedyarov, none of my moves were computer moves. They were just like, I hope Mamedyarov can't figure this out because it's a rapid game and it's complicated. And the engine would just beat Mamedyarov because the engine is better than Mamedyarov. I can't beat him like that. I have to confuse him. So Burke may have known, maybe, that that in this position, if I can ever get to it, he might have known d5 was bad, but maybe he thought it was the trickiest. And the engine just loses in a shallow and pedantic manner. Bishop takes, queen takes, and a human knows, a grandmaster knows that's just winning for white. White's up a pawn, better minor piece, safer king, Papa John's. Okay, so he played d5, confusing the audience. Right. In poker, everyone is terrible is correct. That's right. I agree. But the point of poker, to win at poker, is your opponents play more terrible than you. Actually, you could argue in chess everybody's terrible, and I wouldn't disagree with you. So if you say Magnus is terrible, but, Daniel Naroditsky is more terrible. So, and then Naroditsky's terrible, but I'm more terrible. And I'm terrible, but Talia Cervantes is more terrible. And so you want to be less terrible than you were, even though to not be terrible, you have to get a lot better. You're not going to get good enough where you're not terrible, but you can be better than everybody else. So this is something that it's important in games, is you don't try to play perfectly, you try to play better than your opponent. And if your opponent has a lot of problems to solve, they're going to play more terrible. And that's why John Burke played d5. He's like, ooh, Fabiano, maybe he'll make a mistake. But if I don't play d5 and I play the engine move, I'm just going to slowly lose because I'm losing. If I play d5, the engine says I lose quicker, but this gives Fabi chances to make a mistake. So I'll play d5 because Run DMC recommended it because it's tricky. Yeah. Okay, so Fabi said yum, yum, yum. Now you can't take that pawn because I play knight c6 and you lose. Okay, so 2 pawns up, and he played queen d6, knight b5, God damn. Queen takes b4, b3, and black can't move anything. Frankly, terrible. Yeah, so b3, excellent move, and black can't move anything, and black's down a pawn. The bishop is attacked, the c7 pawn is attacked, the king is exposed, my king is safe, this pawn needs to go here. What black needs to do is play pawn here, and then put a black pawn on d6. Then he's still probably worse, but maybe not. Maybe he's equal then. Okay, he saved his bishop and pawn. And then, black just can't move. There's no move. Worst position ever. And the better you are at chess, the more you realize how bad black's position is. Terrible. Let's say, for example, I move my bishop. Okay, then rook takes rook, d6, threatening the knight, threatening this, and threatening that. God damn. So probably don't go here. For those of you who couldn't see that far ahead, which is all of you, God, son of a... That's a double discovered attack. It's never happened in chess history. It discovers this and discovers that. That's what we call a clearance sacrifice and then some. If you go to a textbook on chess, this is called a clearance sacrifice and then some. It's double clearance. It's on clearance. Okay, so you can't move your bishop, but you better move your bishop because white's going to double up on the bubble up. And, you know, you can't move this rook. You can't move the queen because there's nowhere to move to. Okay, frankly, terrible. So he played king g7, stopping queen f6 and getting out of this pin. Rook a6. And rook a6 is great because Fabi's great. He wants to play queen f6 check. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so he played f6, never play f6. Doubled up on the bubble up. He represents the doubling up on the bubble up. Knight c8. It's So versus Schwiertz all over again. Now in this position, Fabi played a super GM move that none of you would ever consider. And if you saw the move in the game, if you saw like the notation, you would say he probably didn't play that. It's probably a typo. Double up. Now, I'm not saying this is the best move by an engine standard, but it's definitely the best by a human standard. Every move wins for white. When every move wins for you, you want to play the safest, least counterplay move. Right. So he played king h2. And of course, every move wins. But this wins the easiest because there's never going to be a check here. You can't take now because I take. And then your rook's hanging. So after king h2, black can't do anything. There's no legal moves. So the game ended in a draw because black claimed stalemate. And right when Chris Bird was putting the kings in the center, there was a visitor in the tournament room, Nigel Short. Nigel used to live in England, and Chris Bird used to live in England, and now neither one does. And Nigel said, no. New FIDE rules, stalemate is a win. And Chris is like, oh, yeah, that's right. So white won. And black resigned. There's some things you don't want to know, important things. Right, at a top level tournament where everybody's 27, 2800, slightly stronger than this one, black would have resigned a few moves ago. But now Burke is like, if I move my bishop, I lose my rook. If I move my rook, I lose my bishop. If I move my knight, I lose my bishop. If I move my queen, I lose my bishop. So, okay, I resign. Yeah, resigning was good. Yeah, king h2 is great. It's like, haha, you can't move. Terrible. That's right. And Nigel was like, good. Usually I prefer the dark squares, but all right. The engine says white is plus 8.6, and this engine's not good. So if you put it on like the super duper engines, it would say like plus 20 or something. Frankly, terrible. Right, it's a clinic when, like, Fabi played well this game and Burke didn't. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean Fabi's better than Burke, so he played better than Burke. I don't mean that. I mean Burke didn't play well for him. Burke played bishop a6 and d5. And, you know, I mean, Burke for him didn't play well. And Fabi, this was like easily his best game of the tournament. Easy. So when Fabi plays well, he should win because he's playing somebody much lower rated. When Burke plays badly, he's still going to beat a lot of people and draw a lot of people, but not Fabi. And Burke was black. So there's a lot of things added up there that was bad, right? John Burke's like the Dallas Cowboys, okay? Dallas Cowboys aren't very good, but when they play terrible teams, they're good. But if when you play Fabiano Caruana football team, then it's not as good. Yeah. So we'll just call John Burke the Dallas Cowboys. Although more representative of the Cowboys this tournament is Jeffrey Shong. Jeffrey Shong is playing badly and doing badly, and he's from Texas. So Jeffrey, yeah, etc. Also, John Burke is good. He just played a bad game. That was the only game he lost. He has 2 out of 4. Burke has a win and 2 draws. Burke's a very good player. But Black didn't play a good game. Fabi played a good game. Yeah, that's all bad. All bad for Burke. Burke can beat Fabi. Maybe not with Black. Burke can beat anybody. Burke's not as bad as he plays. Yeah. Etc.